everybody. Welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast with me and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And today we're going to be talking about Steven Spielberg yet again, but this time we're going to be talking about not David's favorite Spielberg. So I'm going to be talking about mine, 1982's E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. And David, I'm sure you're still a fan of this movie, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%. But look, I think like the Poltergeist episode we're done, you should take the stage on this one first because this is your favorite Spielberg movie.
I appreciate that, buddy. And it really is. And it's been for a very long time. And it's weird because this movie actually came out 10 years before I was even born. But my mother had me at such a young age that she loved E.T. So when I was a young child, we just watched E.T. a lot. And to the point where, when I watch the movie now, it's such a nostalgic trip for me to just, I have those childhood memories of watching this movie with my mom. When you hear the score, I know we're going to get into it today, it'll actually almost get you emotional just because you're reminded of seeing this movie when you're young. And a lot like Poltergeist, this movie came out in June of 1982. I believe 1 week apart from each other, which is crazy. And, we're going to be talking about Poltergeist today because these are definitely, if not siblings, they're cousins to each other, with Steven Spielberg being a producer. And we talked plenty about what happened there, but today we'll be diving into the other movie. But when you watch these movies, David, the way they feel just like each other. They feel like they are in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. One part of the neighborhood's got a weird alien. The other part of the neighborhood has these Poltergeist entities torturing them. They're definitely in the same universe for me. But as you were saying there, I go back to the other podcast that we've done. When I was growing up, that E.T. was always kind of there. I don't know when it happened. I don't know how you feel about this, John. I feel as if, in a lot of ways, in recent years, that E.T. in a lot of ways has kind of been looked down upon because it is such a sentimental movie, and other movies that came out that year have been elevated. And this is just how I feel, as if E.T.'s been bad mouthed about how can this sentimental, soft alien movie have been the biggest movie of the year. But you have to understand that it literally did become the biggest movie of all time in the summer of 1982, and E.T. was everywhere, and everybody loved him. Families, children, adults. Everybody loved E.T. And you're right, I was the exact same growing up watching this movie. Loved E.T. Part of the problem I had with E.T. was Poltergeist, I was afraid to watch it. E.T., I was afraid of crying.
I'll be right here.
When I watched it. So I didn't want to watch it. And just what you're saying about the nostalgia, John, one point that I want to touch on as well that I was thinking about was when my child was coming along, about a month before she was born, I popped E.T. in, and I had one of those nostalgic moments myself where I was watching this film thinking of when I was young, and imagining when my child was coming along, my daughter was coming along. And funny enough, me being a big Jaws fan, yes, I was excited about showing her all the movies that I loved, but I remember actually thinking that E.T. was one of the first movies that I really wanted to show her.
Yeah, this is definitely one you could show kids. It's almost like The Wizard of Oz, where it's generational because the subject matter, it's very relatable. You can show this to somebody young. It's got those scary moments. It's got this iconic score in there.
Mm-hmm.
And the lessons you learn from it will always live on. And it just feels like one of those generational movies. But you're right. It's weird because even an old podcast I used to watch called The Top 10 Show, they both did a top 10 Spielberg list, and they both, at the beginning of it, made sure to note that they didn't like E.T. And I truly can't understand that. And then I have to take a step back and go, well, this is a movie that was kind of ingrained in me from a young child.
Mm-hmm.
So would I like it as much if I had come to it at an older age? I still feel like I would. But you could definitely look at other Steven Spielberg movies like Jaws and like Close Encounters, where if you come to those first, those are more adult themed movies, whereas this is definitely a family movie through and through.
Yeah, well, one thing that I actually found interesting about this particular movie is that Spielberg says himself that Close Encounters of the Third Kind was about the adults having an experience with extraterrestrials or aliens or something from this that wasn't part of this planet or not out of this planet. And E.T. was supposed to be from the children's perspective. And I was watching some of the making ofs at the weekend, and he says about he was invited to the White House by Ronald Reagan, Nancy Reagan, to show a screening of E.T. before it was released, and he says while they were watching the movie, he turned around and he seen in Reagan's face a 10-year-old boy watching this movie. Here was this grown up older man who was president of the United States, and he was aghast. He says his mouth was hanging open at the wonder of this movie. And you're talking about, would you feel different if you were an adult? Well, one thing that I think, and I feel like this about a lot of Spielberg movies, his early movies, is that I can relate to his movies as a child. Like I said about Jaws, I can relate to the younger characters in that and looking up to Chief Brody as like a father figure and a protector. And it's the same with this movie. I can relate as the child can to E.T. when I was a child. And I can also relate to this movie as an adult, looking at it through child's eyes. And that's just a very kind of magical experience. And that's what I meant when I said that when I watched this movie, I got those nostalgic kind of goosebump tingling feelings watching this movie again, the wonder of this movie, and thinking, how would my child react experiencing this movie and watching it through her eyes, and I couldn't wait for that. So I do definitely think it's a generational movie.
I completely, I agree with everything you said. What did your daughter think when you did finally show her ET?
Well, I did actually show it when she was very young, and she used to watch it with me. I can't remember the first time we watched it, but I do have a video of her watching it when ET was in the river, and
Oh
when
my
and she was only starting to talk then, and she was saying ET's in the water, ET's in the water. Watch the TV. But I have to say that I think I'd mentioned before about brilliant parenting skills about showing my child these 80s movies that I grew up watching. She came in the other day and did say to me that they were having a Halloween quiz in school, and one of the questions was, what did E.T. dress up as on Halloween? And she says, Daddy, I got it right. I answered the question. And I says, well, what did he dress up as? And she says, he dressed up as a ghost. So I'm doing something right. If it wasn't for me having those thoughts when when she was coming along and thinking that I want to show her this movie, then maybe she wouldn't have got that question right.
That's a good point, because not a lot of kids today, I'm sure, know about E.T. And definitely, probably Steven Spielberg movies to them. Like, they'll refer to 80s movies now as old movies, and that hurts a bit, which is crazy because E.T. is a movie I mean, I grew up with it. I've seen this movie in theaters a bunch of times, actually, even from a young age. I saw it there in that 2002 re-release where they took the guns out and put the walkie-talkies in, which now I can't even look at that scene the same because I'm looking at their hands, even though I don't watch it with the walkie-talkies, but I'm looking at their hands on the guns now because now that's where my mind goes when I should be looking at them taking off on the bikes as the score hits in.
Yeah, and funny you should say that. It's like the 2002 re-release. When I seen it was in cinemas, I took my niece and my nephew to go and watch that 2002 re-release. But saying about my daughter, we did have the pleasure of going to watch the 40th anniversary 2 years ago when it was re-released. It was the original version, and I think it was when the 4K was first released, and we were very, very excited about that. So I think that was the last time we both watched it together, was in the cinema watching the re-release on the big screen. I remember it more that time than I did in the 2002 one, and because it was a really great experience, and there was a lot of families there. There was a lot of older people there with their kids, and it was absolutely brilliant. John, what was it you were saying there as well about older movies?
It's that I see, like, they won't actually go see E.T. because they see it as like older films now. Even a lot of Spielberg movies, like, they refer to 80s films as old movies, and we like grew up with these movies. It's just weird. I feel like a lot of people don't give older films a shot. I don't even look at this movie as that old, and it's 42 years old, which is crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is hard to believe, and it's interesting too that Spielberg said himself that he wanted to make a small movie. He wanted to make a personal movie, and he was willing to take the risk of making this film on a $10 million budget and expect it not to make any money. And if it only made its budget back, he would be quite happy. And I suppose up until The Fabelmans, he's seen this as his most personal film, and it's just astonishing that it then became the biggest film of all time.
It's crazy. They call it lightning in a bottle, and it's something I guess we could touch on it now. We both watched the rewatchables, and they referred to this as like Steven Spielberg's greatest year in film. And me and you talked about it off camera about how, this is really when he became the biggest guy in Hollywood. Like that's Steven Spielberg. He reached the top of the mountain. He was climbing. He had one little hiccup there in 1941, but other than that, he always just kept going up and up. The year before, you have Raiders of the Lost Ark, and now you have a cultural icon. And then the next year, you could have another cultural icon like E.T. Like people recognize the shark from Jaws and the characters from Jaws. They recognize E.T. They recognize the Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park. Like Steven Spielberg has created all these iconic characters. But then in 1982, he did have E.T. and the week before that, he had Poltergeist, which is just crazy that he produced Poltergeist and essentially like shadow directed it. And then the very next week, you have E.T. come out. And both movies made money. Like E.T. made ridiculous money, whereas Poltergeist made, good money for a horror film because unlike today, that was a little bit of a tougher sell, even if it is like a family horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, the Poltergeist was still phenomenally successful. I think it was made something like over $100 million on like I don't know what the budget was. It probably wasn't much more than ET. So if it made tenfold, still big profit margin. And it was very successful. But I understand what you're saying because we did talk about that off topic, and they were debating in the rewatchables whether or not that was Spielberg's Apex Mountain, and I'd say to you, well, for me, it's 1993 because he had. Yeah, because he had Jurassic Park, which became the highest grossing movie of all time, and he had Schindler's List, which he won Best Picture, and he won his first Best Director Oscar for. And I was actually thinking about this earlier because I thought you might bring it up because we briefly mentioned it in the chat, in our chat to each other. That's a good point that you say there about, yes, he was on the ascendancy, and I suppose what you could say is that there was a lot of people in Hollywood thought that Jaws was a fluke. And then he followed it up with Close Encounters, which got great critical reception, was a financial success, but was overshadowed by Star Wars. And it didn't do as well as Jaws. It done well, but it didn't do as well as Jaws. And then after that, he had a flop. And there was what it's like, when people are successful, people want to see them fail. And he failed with his fourth feature after having two big successes before that. And then he goes off and he makes Raiders of the Lost Ark. It must have been the biggest film of 1981. But I would say there was probably still doubt there for a lot of people about whether or not, Spielberg's ability as a director. But what happens is that he then makes this wee small personal movie, and that then supersedes Star Wars as the biggest film of all time. So now all of a sudden, he's not a fluke anymore. He's like you say, he's established himself. He's got to the top. But for me, if you look at what he done, pre-1993 with the Indiana Jones trilogy, with E.T., Close Encounters, Jaws, and all those movies he produced in the 80s, Poltergeist, Back to the Future trilogy, Gremlins 1 and 2, what was the other one? The Goonies. I just don't think that he's done as good a work post 93 as he did pre 93, and I'm sure there's plenty of movies that he produced after 93, and he's directed movies like Saving Private Ryan, and he done very good movies like Minority Report. I like Minority Report, movies like that, but I just feel as if that part of his career wasn't as good as the 80s or the late 70s.
No, I actually completely agree. The only two movies you've mentioned them both, that I would say are like two. Actually, I also really like Catch Me If You Can, but none of those movies do reach, like if I'm looking at my favorite Spielberg movies, all of them are going to be pre 1993. So like that's really like he was just on a crazy run, and he reached the section, the top of the mountain in 93 by having the highest grossing film of 93 and winning Best Picture. And what makes that even funnier, and I guess more ironic, is in 1982, he didn't get that critical acclaim. Many people thought E.T. was going to win Best Picture, but actually Gandhi won Best Picture that year, directed by Richard Attenborough, which is funny because then in 1993, he cast Richard Attenborough in Jurassic Park as Dr. Hammond. So it's like, hey, the year I finally get the credit for being this great director, I had the guy who beat me in 82, because looking at the two films, they're not going to give it to this family-friendly movie with a nice alien in it when they can give it to, one of the greatest people of all times film in Gandhi.
Yeah, don't know much about the 82 Academy Awards, but Spielberg was getting snubbed left, right, and center in the early part of his career. I mean, going back to my favorite, to think that Jaws became the biggest film of all time and didn't get a nomination for best director, but got a nomination for best picture, just doesn't make sense at all. And Spielberg seemed to be snubbed all the way right through the 80s, with by the Academy. It's one of those things.
It's just frustrating because I mean, the Academy, especially like, people talk about politics in the Academy now. It was 10 times worse back then. If you look at the 1980s Best Picture winners, it's weird. You got movies like Out of Africa, Gandhi, just movies nobody talks about when they talk about the 1980s. It just felt like the way the movies critics looked at films back then was very different from how we kind of look at films now. Like we kind of look at the movies that can do both, whereas back then they still had like this like snobby way about them. They couldn't allow films like E.T. or even Indiana Jones, like any of those movies, to possibly touch the Academy Awards, despite the fact you get great performances and just you hit every level in there.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'd mentioned to you as well, John, about when we were discussing about that 1982 is the Apex Mountain for Spielberg, and I said it wasn't. Problem or reason was that because I think that a lot of critics were seeing the movies that he was putting in as juvenile. You know what I mean? And a killer sharks, aliens, an adventure from set in the 30s. They weren't exactly serious topics, even though these movies had a lot of emotional kind of pull to them. You always kind of feel very moved by his films, whether or not you're being thrilled or horrified or nearly brought to tears, like watching E.T. And I think that was the problem. Maybe that is the shift that has happened recently in the Academy Awards. They've made the categories bigger to accommodate the people that say, well, for example, why was The Dark Knight not nominated? Well, because it's a comic book movie. But it changed this, it jumped that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but it's still a comic book movie. It's why Batman 1989 wasn't nominated. It's why maybe Raiders of the Lost Ark was nominated, I don't know, but it's why popcorn movies weren't nominated, because they're seen as popcorn movies. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that. I personally think that popular movies should be considered because there's a reason why they're popular. It's not that they're just, a lot of the times it's not the fact that they're just popcorn movies. A lot of them movies have a lot of subtext to them and a lot of meaning to them, and they should be considered for the Academy.
No, I completely agree. And just looking at this movie alone, you can look right into that. There's so much more layers to this movie than just, oh, it's a movie about a kid and his alien. Nah, there's a lot more to that, and you see it right in the beginning, and that's why, like you said, that Steven Spielberg considered this his most personal movie until he got to The Fabelmans, was because a lot of, like we've talked about Close Encounters here on the show, you have relationship issues. This one, the mother is divorced, and we see it right away about how much that is weighing on her. And that's another relatable thing for me growing up as a kid of divorce. And, I wasn't like this where my dad ran away and went to Mexico with another woman or anything like that. He lived the next town over, and I saw him all the time. But, I can understand, because I was a child when they got divorced, that the pain that they kind of feel like with each other, like being separated, and how the other one doesn't want the other kid to say the wrong thing, to upset the mother. Like the older kid understands, like, hey, come on, like, you don't have to bring it up to her. But he doesn't understand Henry Thomas's character. He's a kid. He's a very young kid. That's what we see it all throughout, like with Gertie. That's the child performances in this movie are so well done. They feel like real children, and so do the adults that we do see in this movie.
Yeah, exactly, and that's Spielberg has said that he originally his whole one of the original concepts for a movie was about his parents' divorce, and he also then had this idea about at the end of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when the alien comes out and turns around and gets back on the spaceship. He says the audience was sad that Richard Dreyfuss was going on the spaceship and leaving his family. He says, well, he was sad that the alien get back on the spaceship, and he thought to himself, wouldn't it be interesting if that alien stayed behind, like a foreign exchange student, an extra-terrestrial exchange student, and what happened was then he fused both ideas. So it was about this family who the mother was divorced from the father and the kids, and the effect that divorce was having on this family, and then how this alien came along and basically mends the fractures within this within this family because of the divorce, what has happened and because of the divorce. And that's basically the genesis of E.T. And he said himself that he couldn't admit that at the time. It took him about 10 years to admit it, that was what the movie was about. It was about his parents' divorce. You're right, John. Watching this movie, I absolutely love the performances. They feel absolutely real, relatable. I think Dee Wallace does a brilliant job as the mum. Spielberg says himself that he feels as if that she because of the divorce, she's a child herself. And I particularly like Megal, the older brother, because to me he feels like an older brother. He just has such a natural performance. I particularly enjoy him the most out of the family unit. As I say, they all give brilliant performances, especially Henry Thomas as well.
Yeah, I really love Henry Thomas, and again, this is probably a little bit of nostalgia talking. Like, he is my favorite character in the film. I mean, I just kind of related to him as a kid, even though I was the older brother who had younger siblings. I was the oldest, so I could kind of relate to to the older kid Michael too. But Henry Thomas, I love his performance. It was always to the point, like, whenever I see him in anything else, and he's kind of had a career resurgence in Mike Flanagan movies. So I always see him because his eyes are just like distinct. But I just always felt like his performance always felt like a real genuine kid performance. And it's the same thing, like, and it's weird because this just shows you how good of a just get good at filmmaking that Steven Spielberg is, because I guess this was a producer type decision, was when he cast both the kids for Poltergeist and E.T. Originally, like, they wanted Drew Barrymore for Poltergeist, and he's like, no, like, I think she'll work better over here. And trying to imagine them in the opposite roles, I don't think it would work.
Yeah, no, it's perfect casting, and that's what Spielberg does perfectly well for his movies. I think it was him that said, or he heard it from someone else, is that casting your movie is 50% of the job. It's 50% towards making it a good movie is perfect casting, and he does that. He identified that. He's seen Heather O'Rourke, and he thought, no, she would be best suited for Poltergeist, which she 100% was. And then you see Drew Barrymore in this movie. He's perfect for her wee role in this film as well. And I agree with you about Henry Thomas, even though Megal, for me, and I think it's more as an adult that I identify that Megal is my favourite character as the older brother. But Elliot, I related to Elliot more than any of the kids. And I'm near certain I had his haircut as well in the 80s at one stage.
I unfortunately did have his haircut until I was in 3rd grade, and my dad still will make fun of me for that for this day, because, again, my parents being divorced, he's like, "That was your mother's decision." She's like, "I would have never let you keep your hair like that." I'm like, I don't understand why no one intervened and told her she was wrong.
Yeah, look, that's part of the nostalgia, as we mentioned earlier about nostalgia. For me, watching this film and seeing that 80s style, and of course the style of the movie, and I was thinking about this too as well. I've thought about it a few times while watching E.T. with the popularity and phenomenon of Stranger Things, and you see those type of 80s movies. We've discussed it before in the podcast, John. John Carpenter, Stephen King, Steven Spielberg movies from the 80s, and this to me has to be the very first movie. Would I be right in saying that? Is this the first of the long line of movies of the 80s that started that trend of kids going on an adventure, BMXs, suburban America, finding something extraordinary and dealing with that? It's because this is, as I said earlier, Spielberg said this is a kids' movie. It's not about the adults. It's about the kids going up against the adults and doing what's right by E.T.
Oh, 100%. The perspective of the movie is from the kid's perspective. We see it right away. All the adult we see is Dee Wallace's character. Everybody else is shot from the waist down to get the kid's perspective with the height, which is crazy. And then it's funny because the guy named Keys in this movie, Peter Coyote's character, that guy became, like, his voice became iconic for the Ken Burns documentaries. But it's funny because it took me a while to realize that was the same Peter Coyote. I was like, holy shit, I never realized that, because he doesn't speak until the second half of the movie. And he actually has one of my favorite heartwarming scenes in the movie when he's actually talking to Elliot about, like, how this is like his dream. And, like, I was like, you can relate to that as an adult now. Like, yeah, I always think about that. Like, when you're a kid, like, people look at you a certain way, and then when you become an adult, it's like, you got to figure it out for yourself. But you still have those childhood dreams, and when you're facing it, you don't want to take a back seat to it.
And it's funny you should say that about Peter Coyote and saying about Spielberg intensely wanted to film all the adults from the waist down, apart from Dee Wallace, because he said that she was just like one of the kids, because that was her reaction to the divorce, was to kind of revert to doing childish things. And so all the adults, as you say, you only see them from the waist down. Until later in the movie, when the adults come into the movie to try and take over the movie, right? Basically, take the movie away from the kids. They're going to take ET away from the kids. So they're going to take the movie away from the kids, and the kids have to wrestle it back through ET coming back alive and getting them to a spaceship. But Spielberg had said that he got that idea because of the Taxi Avery cartoons. So I'm just thinking. Coyote, Wile E. Coyote, Taxi Avery.
You're putting it all together right now.
All together. And also as well, one of my favorite quotes from the film from isn't it Peter? Did you say his name's Peter Coyote?
Yeah, is that did I say his first name wrong?
No, it is. I couldn't remember his first name there, but one of his favorite quotes. He says that he got a message from one of his ex-girlfriends saying that as soon as he come on screen, she recognized him.
Oh, that's hysterical. Oh, I wonder why. What she
because it was in the waist down. Yeah.
It's like, I know that. Yeah, those were some tight jeans.
Yeah, well, it was the 80s. And as you say, that opening scene, I love how as well. Did you notice how the Universal logo just comes on the screen right away and zooms out to leave the stars in the sky, which is the opposite way the logo goes?
Yeah, I loved it. I'm so glad you talked. I love the opening sequence to this movie. The score, especially going through the opening credits, it's haunting and yet somehow like mesmerizing. You get immediately transported to this world, and we get like put into a scary scene right away. Which it's always fascinating, like that what these aliens are. They're just really there investigating the agriculture essentially, and they get scared off and they forgot poor ET.
Yeah, and I love how once it goes through the titles, and as you say, it has that kind of ominous music. I mean, you're going to watch. I remember this film was and you're going to watch this family movie, and it opens like that, and it is kind of scary. And then once the camera pans down from the stars, from the sky, and you see all these wee ETs doing they're basically botanists. They're collecting plants from different planets and bringing it back to their own. That's what they're doing. And the screenwriter, Melissa, I think it was Melissa Matheson, she says, so if they're botanists and they're collecting plants, she viewed the ETs as farmers. That she had this idea that there should be plants. And I think the designers then of ET put that into the design of ET, that they're made up more of kind of like a plant substance than flesh and bone. As you say, when ET starts to wander off away from the rest of the ETs, and that musical score kicks in from John Williams, John, it's very haunting. It's very kind of biblical to me. It sounds biblical. I just get goosebumps. It just gives me such a great feeling all over. And I love how E.T. goes up onto the edge of the cliff and looks down onto the housing estate and sees all the lights. And it's almost like we look up to the sky and the stars and we wonder, what's up there? Or you see a shooting star, or you see a plane flying by the lights and you wonder, what's up there? But he's having that reverse thought, looking down on the housing estate, seeing all those lights. What is E.T. thinking there? He's thinking how beautiful it is, and maybe he has that kind of wonder that we have when we look up into the sky.
Yeah, it's actually that's a perfect way to, which I've never really thought of it like that, as far as like how he's looking down on it, which would be the same for him because they were there going to a secluded area, probably looking to get out really fast before anyone notices, and now he's stuck. Got to learn this entire new world, and he's looking at it as, all right, well, here I go. I got to face this head on because what else is he gonna do?
Yeah, exactly. And he's left behind, and then that goes into the Elliot and his family in the house. And one bit that I noticed the other night, I hadn't noticed before, is when they're sitting playing the game of Dungeons and Dragons, and you see kind of Dee Wallace come out and she's putting something in the oven and she bends over, and one of Michael's friends goes to poke her in the bum.
Stop it!
Or the backside, should I say? And you see Michael shouting at him, "Don't!" 'Cause, yeah,
They're such kids, and that again, that's just something that they capture. That these are like, you can see that like they're playing Dungeons and Dragons. I thought that was funny in the early 1980s, which of course would carry over to Stranger Things. I assume it took it right from here. But
oh yeah.
yeah, but like the way, like, so that means that like they're not like the biggest jocks in school, even though Michael plays football. But they kind of like regular kids just having a night out, and then they want to order pizza, which always to me, I love when he first meets ET in the backyard with the way that lighting is.
Mhm.
And then with the pizza, which kills me seeing it on the ground like that.
Adam's standing on it as well.
Yeah, it makes it 10 times worse. It's like you couldn't hold on to the pizza or just place it down.
I know. Sat it down on the table. It was sitting there, and then go for it and take a look. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that you said about Michael. I want to touch on him again. Is that in recent times when I've watched it and I've watched his performance, I just think his lines are so good. He's so funny. The things he says. And I laugh every time when he talks and about the things he says, and that's what I like about him. And it's just so natural. I think he gives such a great performance. Like for example, when Elliot first introduces E.T. to Michael, and when Michael comes into the bedroom, he's giving him all that. He's giving Elliot a lot of abuse about, oh, how do you feel, faker? But Elliot's like, yeah, I feel fine. I want to show you something. Promise, I've got absolute power. And his face, the way he's standing, and he's like, and he does the Yoda impression. He's like, you've got absolute power. Yes. And then turns around, and just the look on his face when he sees this thing standing there, he just doesn't say nothing.
Oh my god, I love all the reactions to everybody when they see ET, but his is shocking. My favorite's Dee Wallace when she comes in all happy and she doesn't. And first of all, she's walking in on ET being sick and like dying, and
Yeah.
she has no idea. So she's got the cup of coffee in her hand, and she like essentially she's like just dumps it like this. She just dumps the whole thing like she's
Yeah.
in complete utter shock, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're a father. If you walked in and your daughter was there with an alien, I don't know how you're gonna receive that.
And she first of all thinks that it's something they've made. She's like, "Oh, guys, that's great." And then when it puts his hands up and says "mom" or something, ET says "mom," that's when she realizes that's real. I mean, there's no kind of freaking out. It's more just shock of what you're actually seeing, disbelief. Whereas like Gertie, Drew Barrymore's character, is more, she's outside, she just starts screaming because she doesn't know what the hell it is. And I love that, how when she comes into the room and says, "Look what I made for you, Elliot," and starts screaming, and ET screams. And then when they go into the closet and she turns and starts screaming, and ET's screaming, waving his hands.
And we haven't really even talked about it yet, is that the creature design, which is another funny thing that this movie became so successful. And maybe this is why people don't like ET so much, because it's probably, I guess, the thing that's aged the worst, is that it's a very obvious and noticeable puppet.
That is true. I mean, I can't remember. I say this is a movie that's always been in my life, and
Yeah,
I can't.
so it's
Yeah,
tough for us to like take a step back, I guess.
yeah, and don't get me wrong. I can sit here and I can look at it and I can go, "Yeah, it looks like a puppet," and you can tell maybe when it's the suit, where there's somebody in the suit. But it's of its time, mate. It's that I've said before. That doesn't bother me. I can get past that. They can get past the shark and Jaws. Because the movie is a lot more than that. It's about the performances, it's about the score, it's about the story. And as you say, I think a lot of that, Spielberg learned an awful lot about how to shoot these type of special effects movies on Jaws. And then he had a lot of optical effects in Close Encounters, and now he's got back to the practical, some optical, but it's all in the lighting, and it's how he lights the scenes, and he lights it with shadow and he lights it with silhouette, and that keeps ET kind of the kind of fakeness of the puppet hidden a lot. Not hidden in that you can't see it. You can see him there, but with the shadow, you can just make the outline of the face. You can see the eyes, the light glaring off the eyes, and then of course, some of the techniques they used, like for example, they used a set where the floor was raised, so all the wires could go under and through the floor.
Similar they did with Yoda on Empire Strikes Back, where they raised the set so that you could move it around underneath.
Yeah, exactly. And basically they had a woman with she's a thin girl, like myself, and she said herself that they picked me because I've got very long and thin fingers. She says, I can thank my father for that. Now, if I had been around in 1981, I could have done that.
Wow.
So they basically had her lying on the floor below the puppet with her arms in ET makeup and her fingers, doing all the hand stuff while the puppeteers were controlling the head and the eyes and the neck and things like that. So, a lot of the actors, even the adult actors said, when they walked on the set and the puppeteers were off set or off screen controlling ET, it seemed very real when they were there. So they were able to. That's another advantage of not using CGI like they do now, is that they were able to act off that puppet.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I never was bothered by it. I never really thought about it. I was just thinking about it from like a younger person's perspective now coming to it, because when I first watched it, CGI is really in the infantry and or infancy rather, and you look at it, it looked really bad. So this doesn't really look that off-putting. I guess if you look at it now, the only thing that ever really looks slightly off-putting to me, because like you said, also like they're plant-based creatures, so he always looks a little off anyway. Just by
Yeah.
It's an alien. You don't know what they're going to look like as it is, so we could all just kind of guess as we go. Only the eyes kind of sometimes will throw me off a little bit, where I'm like, those look a little fake.
Yeah, well, I like that Spielberg said himself is that he was worried because he did look kind of odd. He was an ugly looking creature that the audience couldn't kind of couldn't empathize with ET, and he was worried about that. And he said he made the start of the movie scary on purpose because he wanted it to be scary for the audience. And basically, when Elliot and ET start earning each other's or gaining each other's trust, that as they fall in love with each other, the audience will fall in love with ET, and that's why he has that scene in the bedroom where they were kind of like bonding together, like touching each other, touching his face, and then the next day when he fakes to be sick off school, where he's showing ET the toys and the stuff in the room, which I always love that moment in the movie, and I love the score in that part of the movie too.
Yeah, that's a phenomenal part of the movie. I love the 2 days where he goes to one day where he doesn't go to school because he's sick, and then one of my favorite scenes in the movie, if not my favorite scene in the movie, is the next day when he does go to school. We realize the connection between E.T. and him when he starts drinking beer, and
Yeah.
they have the scene where they're gonna dissect the frogs. I just love the editing with the kiss. That I love that how it cuts between Henry Thomas and the girl, and what ET is watching and how he's mimicking the moves, but he stands on the kid's back, but the audio
Yeah.
is of the film, the wind's blowing. I love that scene.
Well, do you know what? I've got news for you. Out of all the scenes in the movie, that's the one I don't like.
Ah, you're kidding me, really?
Honestly, that is the scene which I kind of get a bit bored, not of the whole movie, but I get bored of that scene and I get do without it. And it's one thing I don't like about this film is that scene. I don't know how important it is to the movie.
It's not important to the movie. You don't. The only reason you need it is to just sell a little bit of the fact that they have this kind of weird connection. So when we get to the end of the movie and he's sick, we also understand why Elliot would be sick too. Is because we could see that what he's feeling, Elliot feels also. Like when he's drinking beer, he's getting drunk.
Yeah, look, I'm sure. Listen, it's fun. It's fun. I just find it a bit goofy, But
It is, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's not, and let him letting the frogs go. You could look at it as cheesy, but again, I guess this is where the nostalgia again comes into. Like I watching this around the age that Henry Thomas is, I could imagine myself. Although I never dissected frogs in school. Did you do that?
oh God, no! You wouldn't be allowed. It'd be seen as animal cruelty.
Okay, so my mom said that they did that like when they were younger, but like that's something that I guess they must have outlawed by a certain point because no one ever did or even mentioned that when I was in school.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do it in school. I don't even know if my older brothers did. I've never heard them talk about it. I have brothers that are 10 years older than me, so they would have been in school that age well, they would have been. Yeah, about that age in the 80s, as Elliot. I was born in 81, as I've mentioned before, so I was only a baby. When the movie came out, I was only a baby. So, look, what I will say is that on the plus, I like when he's going to school and Michael says to him, "Did you explain to him you're going to school?" And Elliot says, "No, how do you explain school to a higher intelligence?" And he goes, He goes, well, I don't know. Maybe he's not that smart. And then he says, I can't remember what Elliot says back then, but he says, that's okay. I just hope I don't wake up some morning on a planet full of these wee squidgy things. But they go down to the bus stop, and that's when he tells his other friends about, oh yeah, you know, because they're teasing him about stepping on the pizza and saying that he's seen something in the shed, and he's like, well, it's actually a spaceman from outer space. And they're like, what? Did it come from Uranus? Right? And one of them says, yeah, one of them says he doesn't get that. And he doesn't. If you watch it, Elliot doesn't get him. Elliot's just kind of like standing, kind of looking. But I suppose when he goes into the school and they're going to dissect the frogs and they put the chloroform in, and you see Elliot just kind of looking at it because he's kind of half cut because E.T.'s been wandering about the house drinking the beer, but you see him kind of flicking the glass and then kind of thinking, and then that's when he decides to free them all. That, I suppose, that's E.T.'s subconscious coming through, not so much Elliot's. It's E.T. that wouldn't want to harm the creatures. So it's kind of, is it maybe just showing the E.T. side of Elliot rather than Elliot? Elliot would have just went along with whatever. If E.T. hadn't come into Elliot's life, Elliot would have maybe just went along with what the rest of the class were doing. But that's E.T.'s subconscious coming through.
Yeah, that's how I felt because it's a creature of nature, that frog, and ET clearly and his people must care about, like, they seem like the kind of people that wouldn't be carnivores or anything like that. I would say
Yeah.
that's just how they view it. So they would not be wanting to kill a frog, which also to them is another alien creature. So they're not just going to do that. They seem like very friendly aliens. Like even when they
Yes.
come to rescue ET, they just get ET and get out of there real quick. They're like, we're not screwing around here, and we don't want any sort of issues.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not so. Say yeah, they don't want to harm another creature. They're not there to harm any other creatures, and that's the way I read that. And of course, I just think it's Spielberg getting a wee bit of his own vanity kind of project getting in there, putting about the quiet man scene, and of course, E.T. at home looking at. Watching the TV, and I love when he switches it over to like this old black and white movie, and they're in an airplane and they're getting beamed up by aliens, and his eyes open up and his mouth's like as if yeah, and he's starting to learn when he's putting the numbers. I love how, because he's going about the house and he's not racking the place, but he makes a wee bit of a mess. But when he starts to put the letters into that, I don't know what you call that toy. I remember them toys where you put it in and it tells you the word back. It's like it's like a spelling type of device.
I think it was called a spell and talk or something like that. I'm telling you, I had one of those things. I can't remember, but I had one.
Yeah, I remember them. But did you hear when he's just typing any letters and it says nuisance? That is not how you spell nuisance. In other words, ET's being a nuisance.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, that's actually one of my favorite moments in the movie is with that thing, and then eventually when Gertie comes home and he talks, it's like, oh my god, he can, like, you know.
What's all this shit?
E.T. phone home.
My God, he's talking.
You talk. Like, that's what I love Drew Barrymore's performance and why she's perfectly cast, is when she realizes he can talk.
Yeah, but do you know what I don't understand? The first evening when Dee Wallace, Mary, comes home from work, when Elliot was off school sick, she goes in and she says to because they're hiding in the closet, and she walks in and says, "What's going on in here?" And he thinks he's caught. Elliot thinks he's caught, and she's like, "What?" And he says, "I'm cleaning," because Michael knocked the shelf off the wall, and she says, "This isn't the room. This is a mess. I want you to clean up in here." And then she says, "Would you watch your sister while I'll go and have a shower?" Now that's just fair enough because she's 6 years of age. But later on, when they think that Elliot's been drinking in school, and she finds the empty beer cans, because that's what I thought. Why would she not think, why is there empty beer cans? And then I forgot, she got the phone call from the school. Come and collect Elliot, because she's like, it doesn't sound like him. What, he's been drinking? And she looks at the beer can. She leaves Gertie alone, a 6-year-old, in the house.
Yeah, I was always wondering that too, is why she would do that. Now, that's not unheard of for the time, at least in the world I come from, where my grandmother would do that with my mom and her siblings, just leave them at very young ages. And like, it's just, you trusted kids a little bit more back then. Like, look at the Halloween scene like the mom just trusts them all to go out and walk the streets by themselves. And yeah, Michael's a little bit older, but the other two are pretty damn young.
Yeah, well, Michael, I would say, is what, 15, 16 years of age. So,
Learning
look,
to drive, so like it has to be around that age, right?
he's what, sorry? He's learning to drive?
Yeah, we see him back in the car out of the driveway. She lets him
Yeah.
do it. So he's got to have his permit or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. So as I say, and Elliot's 10 or 11, so that's fair enough. I mean, I remember trick-or-treating when I was 10 or 11 years of age, but 6, I would never have been left in the house on my own. 6, I barely would have been left in the house when I was 10 or 11. I don't think I would have, maybe during the day, maybe not in the evening. But yeah, I just, look, it's a flaw in the movie, but we all know why it's there. It's because we got to leave Gertie with E.T. for a while so she can learn him how to talk and dress him up, or say a few words and dress him up in a wig with the hat and the bag, and we can have a laugh at that.
Oh, God! Elliot. What?
And then E.T. phone home.
E.T. home phone.
I love that too, like how he says that. That's something that my mom used to say all the time was "Et phone home." Like she would just say it randomly to us. So
Yeah, do the impression. E.T. phone home, doing the finger as well.
home, Et phone home, just repeating it over and over again.
Yeah, which brings me to a thought here as well. So, obviously they come up with a plan. ET wants to create a device to send a signal to his people, as they say, his alien friends, to come and collect him, to let them know he's survived, he's fine, come and get me, or he's not well, come and get me. And they decide to dress ET up as a ghost and go out on Halloween night. And watching this, John, we're recording this at the end of October. It's a couple of days off Halloween. We're going to put it out as a November film or November podcast. But this, I've never thought of this before. This really is a fall or autumn movie. It really is like an alternative Halloween movie.
100%. I think actually where we're putting it out is perfect because it's only really got the one Halloween scene in there. But and then after that, it's the beginning of November, right around when this will come out for everybody. So then the rest of the movie, but it's 100% a fall movie. Feels like it throughout, like just even the clothes they're wearing, even though they're in California, which is completely on the opposite side of the country where I am. And I assume it would be a little bit warmer, but just the early morning feel, like it captures that feeling perfectly. Like when the like dew's on the ground. I don't know what they call it out by you, or, it's that cold, crisp air in the early morning.
Yeah.
I think the movie captured that tone perfectly, when he sleeps out in the woods.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. It really does. And there's some, I mean, listen, Spielberg, as I said, he's a genius. I mean, he frames a movie better than anybody. But there's some amazing, lovely, beautiful shots in this movie, and one of them is the Halloween scene where you see the sunset setting and you see the silhouettes of all the children out trick-or-treating, and then, as you say, which this is a continuity flaw because it starts to get dark, but Elliot goes into the forest and basically it's kind of bright again. Did you notice that?
I've always noticed that, and I've always tried to figure out why it is, and then it took me honestly until I was an adult to realize no, it's just a filming issue. Like I tried to for too long, I'm trying to figure out what happened, and I'm like, nothing happened. It's just an issue with the movie.
Yeah, exactly. But look, doesn't take your enjoyment away from the film.
No, it just at a younger age you're a little bit confused because you don't realize, like, and in this movie actually it's funny, they filmed it in the way that I always assumed when I was a kid. They filmed movies, they filmed it in chronological order as the film was going on. They filmed it that
That's
way
right.
for the kids so that the kids, like they don't get confused, which, Steven Spielberg is the only guy who would think like that. Like, let's make it easier on their child actors because, they're really the stars of this movie, When they film real movies, like they'll film it like whatever's the most convenient. They set a schedule, and the actors have to keep track of their emotions. Whereas this one, they want the characters, the actors, the child actors to feel the emotions as the movie's going on.
Yeah, he wanted an emotional continuity with the kids, and basically when E.T. was leaving at the end, that he was basically able to say, E.T.'s going, you're never going to see him again, and they're going to cry their eyes out. Because that's it. There's the last day of filming. You're never going to see him again. And he wanted to get that emotion from the kids. But one thing I want to talk about it as well, talking about some of the most beautiful shots in this movie, and when Elliot goes into the forest, and up to this point of the movie, we haven't really heard the full E.T. theme. We've heard different themes throughout the movie. Some are still emotional themes in the movie. Some of them are haunting or scary, and some of them are sweet and tender and emotional. And But once he goes off that cliff on that bike, that is the first time the John Williams score of E.T., which I think is called Flying, it's the first time you hear it. And as soon as he goes off that cliff and it just kicks in, it's absolutely amazing. And you see the bike go through past the moon. What do you think about that?
It's one of the most iconic shots in film history. The perfect drop of a score. Just the moment it kicks in is the perfect moment. And it's the background right now. I don't know if you could see it on your end, but it's literally
Yeah.
him, and then that becomes the Amblin Entertainment logo. It is iconic for a reason. I mean, we touched on the John Williams score throughout, but when that moment kicks in, it's one of the greatest moments in film history for a good reason. You know, just put it in a bubble with that score. It's absolutely incredible. It's still magical every time you watch it this very day, and then going right into the landing is perfectly. I love it. I love it. It'll get me every single time. It's probably my favorite use of score in film, like this, and then in Jurassic Park again with John Williams when they first see the dinosaurs. Like those moments, just with it's perfect. It'll give you goosebumps, and it always works on me.
Yeah, no, listen, couldn't say it better. 100%. I totally agree with you. And you know, if Jaws didn't exist, this would probably be his best score. Okay.
Yeah, and it's funny because like it's tough because this came out, like we talk about it, comparing it to Poltergeist and Jerry Goldsmith's score. I love that Jerry Goldsmith score, and it's tough because they're both top 5 all time for me. I still kind of like that Jerry Goldsmith score slightly more than I like this ET score. Just like I kind of like Poltergeist more than I slightly. It's weird because like your favorite film ever is Jaws.
Yeah.
My favorite film ever is The Terminator, but I'll still put Poltergeist slightly above it. So in my favorite films order, like my first Spielberg movie is this, but I'll still put Poltergeist, which he produced, a little bit over it, which is it might be a little bit crazy for some to hear, but I just the horror genre puts that little extra oomph.
You talk about the movie Poltergeist, you would put above E.T. or the score?
I'd put both.
Both of them? All right,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
I really,
Yeah.
I truly love Poltergeist. Like that really is one of those movies. I think when I'm watching this, I immediately want to put Poltergeist on. They feel so similar to each other. Like I can't.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to actually separate them in my mind because they feel just so similar.
Yeah. No, they really are. But two different genres, but still have that kind of family overtones to it. Very real grounded American family, going through different type of situations in their personal lives, and then these kind of forces come into their lives, and it's about them reacting to them forces. And I think as young people, as adults, being part of a family, you can kind of identify with some of that, and I think that's what makes the connection for us. It's like if you're put in that situation, you think, well, how would I react? I was thinking about this earlier about modern movies as well. That's part of the problem I have with modern movies, because I've seen a trailer for something, and every time I see a trailer for a new movie or TV show, I look at the people on screen, the actors or the actresses, and I think to myself, I don't relate to you. I can tell you're acting. You're not a relatable person to me, and that's one thing about Poltergeist. E.T. I can relate to everybody in this movie. You said about Peter Coyote as well. Again, said about Dee Wallace being Spielberg says she's a kid. Peter Coyote in a lot of ways is a kid too, because he, as he said to Elliot, he came to you, should feel good about that, and I've dreamt of this myself. Didn't happen for Peter Coyote, but he's living it through E.T.'s eyes. He can relate to E.T. Elliot's eyes. He's living it through Elliot's eyes. He can relate to Elliot because he was that child once.
100%, and I couldn't have said anything better than what you said. And that I think that's exactly what it is with these two movies. It's these two families. These feel like real homes. That's one thing with the production design is both of these houses feel like real homes that you could have lived in. Like I came from a divorced family, so I understand that. But then my dad got remarried, and like I could relate to the family with that Craig T. Nelson's family and the Poltergeist house, like those carpets and everything in the houses, the way they feel. Like in a modern home, it just even though this movie came out and both of these movies came out before I was born, the housing just still felt like that, at least here in America, once I got older. And like I could relate to that. And like houses today and homes today with all the technology around, they just feel very different.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's just this is nostalgia for me, John. Obviously, the homes in America, which I see in this movie, there was nothing like the homes that we lived in over here. But in the 80s, we lived in I think it was a three bedroom, what they called semi-detached house. So we did, not very big. And there was 7 of us, 4 brothers, shared bedrooms and stuff like that. But what I can relate to, being very young, growing up in the 80s, is community. That's what I can relate to, as well as the family. Don't get me wrong. It's not about the bricks and mortar. You know what I mean? It's not about the home.
To be clear, I never lived in a house that looked like any of these houses.
And funny enough, Spielberg actually said himself, he says that because the movie was based on his parents' divorce, he says that basically E.T. is a fantasy of what a suburban family, in his mind, is or should be. So that's him even saying, well, I didn't grow up like that. It's maybe a neighborhood or a family that I would have liked to have grown up in. He did say himself that there was an awful lot of fighting between him and his sisters. He doesn't put this in this movie. Even in Poltergeist, there's not really that much. I mean, there's a wee bit of back and forth between the kids, but there's nothing like screaming or fighting over things as brothers and sisters sometimes do. You know what I mean? So he said himself that E.T. is a fantasy of what a suburban American household would have been. So when I say that myself about the nostalgia, it's about community. It's just, I think it's just about the neighborhood and very real people within that neighborhood, not so much what it looks like.
No, yeah, exactly. That's like I could feel like the bedroom of sharing a room with your brother, because like I shared a room with my brothers and sisters, not my sisters, but like with my brother or one of my other brothers when I got older. So I always shared a room when I was a kid because I always had siblings. I never lived in a house like this big or anything like that, but you could still kind of relate like to how like the rooms were set up and everything. It just didn't feel artificial. If like we talked about it before, everything just feels realistic. The characters feel
Yeah.
realistic. You know, like even an early scene showing, like letting the mother, like that's something that only Spielberg would think of. Let the mother letting her son pull the car out of the driveway, and like he's doing a shitty job
Yeah.
at it too. Like that's very like relatable. Like I could like he's trying to learn, so he's excited to drive the car. So he's still like, even though he's the oldest, he's still a kid.
Yeah, but it's also setting up for later on when
Yeah, we
when
have to talk
Y-
about.
when yeah when he's stealing when they go to steal ET, and basically Elliot tells Michael, look, ET's alive and we've got to take him back to this spaceship, his people's coming. And I love when he Elliot's in the back of the van and he basically pulls the sheet back, and there's Michael. He's putting on the outfit, and it scares him. He turns around and he says to him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm putting Hayden on." He says, "Well, what are you waiting on? Let's get out of here." And he says, "I've never drove forward before." and I love how the guy actually comes up to the window. He sees him. He knocks on the window and he goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm driving." And he's like, "No, you're not. Get out of the car, son." And then he goes to take off. But I love how, do you ever see when he pulls up and he stops and he sees his friends on the bikes, and he puts the windows down and he says, meet us at the play park, bring the bikes. Like, none of them say why or what's happening. You just hear them go. One of them going, "Yeah, let's do it."
I love the friends, and that's what makes it all so relatable too. Is how like the kids like, yeah, let's go. Like it doesn't matter; they're just there for their friend, and like like you said at the beginning of this podcast, like the adults tried to take the movie away, and now the kids are taking it back. Like it's their movie because it wasn't an adult movie. And when we first see the adults, it gets scary again. Like how they take over this house, throw the sheets over it, they're wearing the white suit, becomes petrifying. And then it turns back into this sad movie at the very end, but yet heartwarming, saying goodbye to E.T. And that just does not, none of this in the end, and the very end of this movie works without that amazing John Williams score.
Yeah, but I wanted to go back to John Williams because we were touched on him more, and then I got a wee bit sidetracked with other things in the movie.
So much to say.
What is it, mate? Sorry?
There's so much to say about this movie.
There's so much to say, and I really wanted to say this about John Williams because we talk about Spielberg and we talk about the late 70s for Spielberg and his track record getting into the 80s and producing movies. But my God, John Williams. Okay, look at this. Jaws, Oscar win. He then done Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Star Wars in the same year. Oscar nomination, I think, for both. One for Star Wars, 1978, he does Jaws 2, he does Superman the movie, right? 1980, he does The Empire Strikes Back. 1981, he does Raiders of the Lost Ark. 1982, he does E.T. and wins another Oscar.
He's got 5 of them. I just looked this up while you were talking.
He's 5. Yes,
He's got
5.
which he should have, in my opinion. I would think more than that.
John, I think he's the most nominated person in history aside from Walt Disney, and I agree he should have more. And the thing is that, like, I think we talked about this in the Close Encounters podcast. Imagine losing to yourself in 1977. The Star Wars for the work he done on Close Encounters, which again is phenomenal. But I mean, who has a better 7 years than that in movie film score in history? Who?
There's nobody. It's incredible. Like, you just rattling them off. It's amazing that his name is synonymous with not just this movie, which is at the time became the highest grossing film of all time, Close Encounters, but then the Star Wars franchise. You throw that in, the Indiana Jones franchise, like all these movies coming out at the same time and having scores. Superman, like, these are iconic themes that still get talked about today, all done by the same composer.
And it's not only that as well. I mean, it's one thing to turn around and say, yeah, Spielberg's a genius filmmaker and John Williams was doing the music. As I've said, I've rained off 2 Star Wars movies there and Superman the movie in between that as well. So as I say, he went to other directors and other franchises and he done it there as well. And look, Spielberg fully gives John Williams credit for 50% of the success of Jaws. You mentioned Jurassic Park, when you first see the dinosaurs. E.T. we talked about when he first goes off the cliff and going past the moon, phenomenal, iconic moments. But for me, I mean, I love the whole Jaws score, but when Roy Scheider tells Robert Shaw, you're going to need a bigger boat, and they walk out and they see that shark go towards them and past them, and then that music for that whole scene up until they hook that first barrel, that gives me goosebumps every single time. And it's this score here, when I watch this movie, gives me goosebumps all the way through. There's so many iconic moments with the score. And as you had said there as well about when the adults come back and try and steal the movie from the kids, and you see that shot of the road and the silhouette of the bodies coming up towards the house, and you just hear that drum beating. Yeah. It's scary. It's ominous. And another point that I wanted to point out, I was thinking about the other night, wasn't it? Because we talked about it on Poltergeist as well, with Spielberg directing. How would they come into that house? It was even a scene before that, where I think it's Halloween, where the kids go out to Halloween and Dee Wallace, they're supposed to come back because they're going to have a party, and then obviously they don't come back because Elliot's in the forest, and she comes out in the car and gets in the car and you hear giving off about something. She's mumbling something, and as she's driving off, she's like, Mexico.
She's so mad about Mexico. He hates Mexico.
She hates Mexico, and even when the cop comes in the next day and is questioning about, because they've reported Elliot missing, and he says, is there any reason why he would have run away? And Dee Wallace says, well, me and my husband recently got divorced. And you see then Gertie says, he's in Mexico. And you see Dee Wallace's face is like,
but yeah, because she's driving her nuts with that.
She hates the Mexico thing. Just don't mention Mexico. But the thing is, when them the NASA guys or the guys from the government go into the house and they're surveilling the house, all that stuff you had mentioned in the Poltergeist episode we did is all reminiscent of Close Encounters with the toys. And the same thing we see happen in Poltergeist, and we're seeing it again here in E.T. It links these 3 movies, in my opinion, and it's all very scary.
I completely agree. It all is very scary, and it's all building to the end, which it becomes like almost like very like inspirational and heartwarming at the very end. And I've seen the very end, like where they take the John Williams score out of it, and it makes it a whole different thing. It doesn't feel as heartwarming and as sad, because it will get you emotionally every single time when he's saying goodbye to E.T. in the forest.
Oh yeah,
with the beautiful lighting. And I gotta ask you, because I always think of it now after our Close Encounters podcast, like, what do you think of the ship that E.T. like gets back on?
It's okay. I like the Close Encounters spaceship better. It's underwhelming.
It feels like a shrunk down version of it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a big teardrop or something.
Yeah, it never blew me away. It always feels a little slightly out of place. Although I love the shot of like the door closing on ET from the ground.
I love when it goes up and it goes to the side and it leaves like this rainbow, and you hear the John Williams music, like a triumphant type of John Williams music playing. And you just see Elliot looking up at it and the wind blowing, and you see the whole family just looking up at it. But as you say about the ending, I love when they get to the park and when the doors open and all this smoke comes out, and you see the kids with the bikes standing watching, and then Elliot comes out and puts his red hoodie on, and he says, this is a guy, a man from outer space. We're bringing him back to his spaceship." And one of the friends says, "Well, can he just beam up or something?" And I love how Elliot says, "This is reality, Greg."
Elliot always with Michael's friends. He's always like having to talk back to them. I think he thinks he's smarter than him.
Yeah, but you notice them earlier on, he's the one that says about Uranus, and they're always having a bit of banter, and Elliot's the one saying zero charisma. But I love, like, just going right back to the start of the movie is like when because they are about 3 or 4 years older than Elliot, maybe 5 years older than him. It's like when Michael's playing with his friends in the house, they're ignoring Elliot. You know, he's just a wee brother. He's not to be kind of taken seriously or taken acknowledged of, only to be taking the piss out of. And that, you know, that's kind of what happens towards the end. But yes, that whole scene towards the end where the government agency is actually chasing the kids, just from when they leave that house with ET in the back till you get to the end, it's just a roller coaster ride. The music doesn't stop, and I think that I had mentioned it before that Spielberg actually asked John Williams just to play that whole end part with the orchestra and record it, and he would re-edit his movie to that music.
Yeah, you did mention that before. I don't remember if it was on the Poltergeist pod or not, but yeah, you did mention that that's what he did. He adjusted to around John Williams' score because they do go hand in hand. It just does not. It wouldn't work without that John Williams score at the end. It's just beautiful filmmaking, lit perfectly at that sequence. I love how beautiful that whole end of the movie looks with the forest behind them, the one ship, and that's it, just saying goodbye. And it's heartbreaking, even though, you know, this is something that has to happen just for ET's sake. He can't survive here. They're going to want him for look what they were going to do to him just now. That didn't matter if he was alive or dead. They want him for, you know, just do experiments on him and whatever. They'll kill him if he's not dead.
Yeah, exactly. And I have to say as well that one moment I actually like more than the moon crossing, and I know that the moon crossing is the most iconic shot of this movie. It's one of the most iconic movie shots of all time. It became the logo of Amblin Entertainment. But I love when they go past the sun instead, all the bikes, and you see the trees.
Oh, I love that too with all the friends. Like, yeah, it's definitely more iconic with the moon, but like seeing everybody else's reaction, very Goonies-esque in my opinion, with all the outfits and the bikes and everything. But like all their reactions, but they're not scared. They're just excited because they're kids.
Yeah, and as you say, when they do get to the forest, what I like as well is that they all have their own wee personal moment with E.T., their own kind of like personalized goodbye. Gertie, who originally gave him the flowers, gives him the flowers back. And did you see the size of them bloody flowers when she's in the car with her mum, Dee Wallace, and Peter Coyote comes over and says, "Where are you going?" And she's like, "We're going to the forest, going to the spaceship to the moon." And she's pushed her back. The flowers are massive, got really big, but. So she
full of life now.
Yeah, full of life, exactly. He's going wild, and I'd hate to see if he had a stayed a wee bit longer, would have grew an actual forest himself. But yeah, so she has her own wee personal moment with E.T. giving him back the flowers, and she gives him a kiss, and then I just like how Michael goes over and just rubs his head, and he thanks him for saving him. He says thank you, and he says you're welcome, and then obviously E.T.'s. Asks Elliot to come with him, and he's like no, and he says ouch, my heart's hurting, referring back to when in the forest when he says about why don't you just stay here, E.T., we can grow up together, and E.T. says ouch, and then I love how he says be good, because that's what he said to him in the bedroom when he was leaving him behind in the bedroom, which I tell my dog all the time to be good,
and they don't listen.
She doesn't listen. But yeah, just those wee personal goodbyes, and it's a very emotional end of the movie.
It is, and it sends you home like with tears in your eyes, but you're happy and you understand why they can't be together. And it's also kind of a play on Close Encounters, how a lot of complaints were like the dad left them. It's like, you stay with your family, I'll go stay with my family.
Yeah, and it's an uplifting ending as well. It's very uplifting. At the end, even though it's sad, they done the right thing, because if ET had stayed, he wasn't going to survive. The government were after him. He couldn't survive on Earth anyway. So all's well and ends well, and all these characters have probably grown and learned things about each other, and have probably appreciated each other more as well.
He saved the family at the end of it. It brought them all together. They'll always have this, the four of them, like as far as the three siblings and Dee Wallace. The father's not there, but they'll always know E.T. And Dee Wallace obviously doesn't have the connection with him. It was too late for that, but she sees what he did for her kids.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what Spielberg was saying about the fracturing of the family. And she would probably, in retrospect, because she started noticing things throughout the movie that were off with Elliot. Like, why are you behaving like this? And why did you run away, Elliot? Why were you drinking in school, Elliot? So they would be able to relay what happened the previous week. And I think she would have a greater appreciation for her kids then, because of what they done caring for this. She would know then, even though her relationship is broken with their father, she's still raising good kids.
They all seem like they're well off. They'll end up being good kids. Even Gertie, even though Gertie's always the one that's always that too young a child that just can't keep her mouth shut.
Yeah, exactly. And there was something else. There's something else I was going to touch on there, and I can't even remember what it was, mate. It was about towards the end of the movie. Maybe it'll come back to me. But something that I actually do want to talk about is the special edition of the movie, which I seen in the cinemas in 2002. You said you seen as well.
I did, and then the DVD came out. I didn't buy it, but my mom, again, like she's a big ET fan too, had to have that DVD. So that was the DVD we had floating around our house for a very long time, replacing the VHS, which didn't have the guns replaced by walkie-talkies.
Yeah, well, I think, funny enough, that one of the making-ofs that I watched the other night, it done a whole. It was on for an hour. It's on the Blu. No, it's on for about 50 minutes. It's on the Blu-ray, and they spent like the last 15, 20 minutes promoting the special edition and talking about how great the special edition is. And I just think to myself, oh, isn't hindsight 2020? Because here we are 20 years later, and you can't even get that special edition, and for good reason, because it's ridiculous. We talked about the puppet earlier and how dated it is now, but I think that the CGI which they put into the movie to make ET a wee bit more kind of expressionate, a wee bit more expression on his face and stuff, that would look worse now than the puppet.
Yeah, and that's exactly what the problem is when you go back and look at the George Lucas ones of the same time, is they got so excited with this new CGI. The problem is now when you go watch the Star Wars special editions and they have those certain CGI sequences, but like especially in A New Hope on Tatooine, they wanted to make Tatooine look more lifelike, but now the bad CGI in there, now it looks faker than it actually did back in the 1980s, because
Yep.
bad CGI ages way worse than practical effects, because at least the practical effects are there on set.
Yeah, the thing is that I think as well, when you go back and do stuff like that in retrospect, it doesn't fit with the rest of the film, what you were filming at the time. It's one thing to turn around and say, right, we're filming a movie and we're going to use the tools we have here at our disposal, the likes of CGI. You can look at a movie, say, in the early 2000s and go, well, it was filmed with that in mind. But I think that when they take an older movie and they put CGI in, it looks even worse, if that makes sense.
It's going to draw your eye more, that's for sure, in a negative way. It's never in a positive way. I just feel like directors like Spielberg, now James Cameron, and George Lucas, they got really excited for the new technology. And it's like, oh, I can go back and fix the issues that I had in the 80s, that we could not do this. And now I can do it and I can fix my work. Not understanding that the attachment people had to it was all part of the charm, was having those effects. And to try and mess around with it, I get why you would want to do that. We all like to go back and fix work that we did in the past, but you're alienating the people who loved your work for what it was.
Yeah, and no pun intended there, John, alienated.
Yeah, I know. I didn't intend it that way, but it works for Spielberg.
But you're right. And look, I remember I've heard we discussed this briefly at one stage where I heard a filmmaker, I can't remember who it was, saying that once you release a movie to the public, you no longer own it anymore. It's the public owns it. And that's the thing. And now this is only an opinion. I think that filmmakers that think they can take their work that they have created after a amount of time and bring it back and change things, I personally think they're wrong in saying, well, I'm the artist, I'm the creator, I can do what I want. I think they're wrong. I think that filmmaking is a collaborative effort. And I think that once the film is out in its final form, and if it's a beloved movie, then you should just leave it. I don't mind things like a director's cut or like a special edition, like Terminator 2. Don't mind Cameron's version, though. To be director's cut, though. To be honest with you, nowadays I find myself just watching the theatrical version of Terminator 2.
Really? I watched the uncut version of T2 so much that it's actually my preferred version. Just because of the extreme DVD that came out, that was the version
Yeah,
I would watch for years, to the point that now when I go back, because the new 4Ks that came out, even though they're bad, they only have the theatrical cut. So when I watched the theatrical cut, it was the first time in probably 15 years when I watched that 4K. It's a little jarring for me to see it without the certain
yeah.
scenes in there, like missing, because I'm used to them being there.
You're conditioned to them being there, so when it's not there, you feel as if something's missing. Whereas I was the opposite. I grew up watching the theatrical version, and I remember the special edition being a big deal made out of when it came on television. And I loved seeing those extra scenes, especially when the Terminator has the chip taken out of its head.
That's
I
the
love
big scene for me. I want
oh,
that scene. I can live without certain other ones, but that one I want.
I love that scene, amazing scene. But I think the reason I'll go back and watch the theatrical version now, probably more than the special edition, is because it's tighter, and I feel it's just a tighter movie overall. And of course, they can just talk away that scene about the chip by Arnie saying, "I'm a learning computer. The more I interact with humans, the more I learn." That was it. Whereas, like in the special edition, he says the chip is set to read only. And Sarah Connor says, "Oh, Skynet doesn't want you to do any learning," and he says, "Exactly, and that's why I have to go in and reset the chip so we can become more human." And that was her ploy, just to try and smash the chip. But getting back to ET, I find it a wee bit ironic that when I was watching the reasoning in between and behind the special edition, it was that we wanted to reissue the movie for we don't want to do a sequel. They said early in the 80s. Spielberg don't want to do a sequel. Let's just leave it how it is. But 20th anniversary, we want to reissue it for the fans, but we're gonna change things, but we don't want to change it too much. We don't want to take the integrity out of the movie. We just want people to remember it as it was, but just to update the special effects. Spielberg says himself, it's just he just goes like, it's just the facts I would have used back in '82 if I had them, or '81 if I had them. But then he goes and changes the guns to walkie-talkies, which is one of the most controversial decisions in movie history. What do you think about that?
100%. That's that, and then there's the Greedo shot first from Star Wars: A New Hope. Those are the two biggest changes, I would say, to classic films in film history. I would say that those are, like, most fans agree, those are the two things that should have never been touched. Star Wars hasn't fixed it, but at least Steven Spielberg saw the error of his ways, and every edition that's been released since took out changing the guns to walkie-talkies. Never made sense. It made sense to have guns because, of course, they would have guns. It's 1982. I get what you're saying with gun violence, but it never, ever made any logical sense for that to not be guns.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I can understand the controversy from a political point of view, but it's a movie. And, people have been making movies for decades. Bad guys, good guys with guns, bad guys with guns. To me, he's made a comment on the documentary about when he became a father that he didn't like the guns in ET, and his whole outlook on gun violence changed, and he had an opportunity to change. He felt like he didn't need the adults to have guns to feel threatening, that walkie-talkies would be enough. And I thought to myself, well, a guy with a gun to me is more threatening than a walkie-talkie. And so, in other words, what he's saying is the adults are just a threat. And I think that's distasteful. Just to say that adults are just a threat.
It just feels like a guy who's sitting there and overthinking things about his movie that, it's out there already. It's been out there for 20 years. you don't need to do anything more to it. It's already out there. Like, it's just a guy overthinking what he already put out because he can. It's his work. And that, that's where I a little bit different than you on it. Like, once it's out there, as long as they don't keep as long as they keep the originals out there, whatever he wants to do with it, he can do with it, because I've always felt like it is his movie, it's his intellectual property. He can like lot, but as long as you don't take him away, that's always what bothers me about George Lucas. Is it's almost like he's ashamed of those 3 Star Wars movies in their original form.
Mm.
Like because he specifically just will not let them get new physical releases or digital releases. The last ones are before the special editions came out in what, 97?
Well, I heard about the Star Wars ones, and I don't know if it's true, that the original negatives were wrecked when they done the special editions. So that's why that's what I heard, that the original negatives were actually altered that much that they're wrecked now, and they can't put out the original versions when they done the special edition. Don't know if it's true. Now, they may be able to get old reels somewhere of the original movies and try and restore them, and then digitally process them. I actually had a version of the originals on DVD. They did release them, and I never opened them and never watched them, and then sold them years ago, because I thought to myself, these will come back on Blu-ray at some stage or 4K, and I'll pick them up then. They're bound to release them at some stage, but they've never surfaced, and that's what I heard. I don't know if that's true.
I'm not too sure. It's something that's like very upsetting to a lot of people. Like me, I don't really mind too much. It is what it is. But I would love to see the original forms of those movies out there. Like, I'm glad
Yep.
that the ET 4K is the original form of the film.
Oh yeah, and listen, I think that Spielberg realized he made a big mistake with that. Look, I don't know what his opinion may still be the same, but he may turn around and say, but because I've heard him say things like, I've heard him make comments in recent years, John, about films are a product of their time and should reflect of and should reflect that of the time, so they shouldn't be tampered with. And I think what he's talking about is it's not so much even the ideology or the political kind of aspect of a movie. It's even just the movie making process of a movie. Like, I remember in the early 2000s, they're talking about replacing the mechanical shark and Jaws with CGI. They were talking about doing it, and they were even talking. Even Richard Dreyfuss has advocated for doing it, because he has said that the shark looks dated, we should do it. I've heard him say it. Now, whether or not E.T. changed, then we go back to early 2000s, E.T. maybe changed Spielberg's mind to go back and change the shark and Jaws because he's seen the backlash, right? What's happened with E.T. So I have heard him say that he thinks that movies should just reflect the time, and that includes the movie making process and the special effects. And I think he's right. I have no issue with seeing an old movie and seeing how old special effects were done. I can as I told you before, I can put myself in that time, and it doesn't. If it's a good acting and it's a good story, it doesn't bother my enjoyment. There's a lot of people aren't like that, but I think he did realize the mistake with the guns, and it doesn't make sense in the. It doesn't make sense in the story either, that E.T. would see guys with walkie-talkies waving the bikes down, and for his eyes to open up wide and look scared. He sees the guys with the guns because I think he had seen something on the television as well earlier. So he realizes they're in grave danger, and that is why he decides to elevate the bikes and go into the sky. He could have went into the sky earlier. He didn't do it.
No, this exact moment is when he wanted to do it. Is because he was trying to evade that roadblock with the guns.
With the guns, he's seen the real danger, because the guys were chasing him for ages. The guys nearly caught them on one stage. He didn't say, I'm going to fly now. And that was the thing I was going to say earlier. There's actually a bit in the film where the stunt, I think it was a girl. It might have been a girl, stunt woman. I could be wrong. Maybe it was a fella, but it was a stunt woman playing Elliot on the bike, and they go down through the housing estate, and she falls off her bike, and they left it in the movie. You can see her fall.
You do actually see that at the very end. That's funny. And yeah, I never realized that it was a stunt double, which makes a lot of sense. That's where my bad eyes come in. Sometimes I'll miss stunt doubles because like there's some really obvious ones out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did grow a bit of foot.
Yeah, it's always crazy when the worst. I mean, I know you're not a fan of it, but it's Blade Runner, because they changed from a female to a man, and like the person looks like a man.
or like the girl in the Lost World who starts doing the acrobats to kick the raptor.
Yeah, we got to bring in a complete gymnast for that, which of course makes sense because, but why would you even put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, but her shoulders were twice as broad as they were 2 minutes earlier. It's just spinning around that pole and all.
Oh man, that's something we just don't get anymore.
No, we can get that. It was all CGI now.
Yeah, you can
You
just
know.
cover that up with that. Oh man, that is funny. But I do you think we got everything here with ET?
Listen, I'm sure there's something else we could think of, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think we'll covered a good bit of it.
Yeah, and hey, listen, I really enjoyed this show. And I was looking forward to it. I just couldn't wait to talk ET.
Yeah, no, that's great because look, I know that we were supposed to do this last November, and I was unable to do it. I had to put it off, and we went into doing Rocky instead because that was a Thanksgiving movie. So I'm glad we've eventually got around to doing it, mate.
I appreciate it because I do absolutely love this movie. So we've done both of our favorite Steven Spielberg movies now, and so I mean we've covered a lot of Spielberg here on the channel. It's one of our favorite directors, so it makes a lot of sense. But we are going to be going into what next, David?
So we're going to be going on a road trip and taking a plane, a train, and an automobile.
I can't wait to talk to you about this one, man.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. This is a Thanksgiving movie for yourself across the pond.
Yeah, which is there are not very many Thanksgiving movies. This is really the only this and last year we got that slasher movie Thanksgiving from Eli Roth, but really this is it. You know, there's plenty of Christmas movies. There's a dime a dozen for that. But Thanksgiving, there's really not many.
Yeah, no, there's not. And this is kind of like an unofficial early Christmas movie for me because we don't celebrate it over here. So I don't. But
It'd be silly for you guys to celebrate Thanksgiving.
yeah, no, exactly. We just wait. We just wait the Christmas day and have our turkey that day.
Oh my god, yeah. I work at a butcher shop, so the turkeys they're starting to come in now.
Oh, I can't wait. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's it. The season. It's sad though because out here, I mean, I got stuff where I work that says that it was slaughtered in Ireland. So I'm sure you've seen. I mean, I don't know where you live, but like we have farms out here, and you'll see the turkeys growing, and then one day you drive by them, there's no more turkeys.
I remember a load of years ago, a girl my mum worked with says they could get my mum and dad a turkey for, I think it was for cheap or whatever. She knew somebody on a farm, whatever, turkey farm, and they delivered it, and it was plucked, but it still had its feet and its head on it.
Oh my god.
I think its head was on it. I can't remember, but its feet was definitely on it. I just always remember the turkey in the sink and the feet sticking out. No, they got seen in Gremlins where she puts it in the blender.
Yeah. Well, and the feeder like puts the gremlin in there, and the gremlin's feet
Yeah.
are sticking out before she starts doing it.
Yeah, but it was sitting in there defrosting with the feet. But my dad was a butcher when he was younger, so he was able to got it and sort it out for us. But yeah, look, it's not something I envy.
Yeah, and luckily for us, they will come in hopefully deheaded and without the feet, but it doesn't mean we don't get them with that stuff because I was at work the other day for people who aren't, might be a little squeamish. Walked in the back and just sitting in a shopping cart was a dead deer. Like no one warns anybody. Just walk in the freezer and there's a deer in there.
And there it is.
And there it is, just sitting there.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that job, mate.
Yeah, I mean it's a little rough, especially since I love animals, and you got to kind of separate yourself because I mean, how many we all eat meat. I don't
Yeah.
think you'd want a photo of the animal before you eat it.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, I like meat, but I prefer just to kind of
Separate yourself from it, right?
yeah. Well, when I go in this shop, I don't want to see his deer's head beside the actual meat that I'm about to buy, and this was the deer. I just have it
over here.
yeah, or the pig. You know what I mean? I just want to go in and buy my bacon or my sausages and bring them home and fry them, or grill them. That's basically it.
No, I totally get that. I'm the weird one.
Yeah, no, you're not weird at all. I agree with you.
So, but anyway, guys, that's going to do it here for us on another episode of the Let's Talk podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed the show, and we will be seeing you guys next time. Hey guys, just popping in at the end of the video for this week's digital code giveaway. In every single video that we do on Friday, I ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below. And as long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video where I'll put your name on a magic wheel. We'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you. today. And we just got done talking about my favorite Steven Spielberg film, and I want to hear from you guys. What is your favorite Steven Spielberg film? And what is your favorite 80s franchise? You know, Steven Spielberg, he was at the helm of one of the biggest franchises of the 1980s in Indiana Jones, but maybe that's not your favorite franchise of the 1980s. Leave those answers in the comments section below. And then while you guys are down there, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this video if you could. And guys, we also have channel memberships, so if you want to become a friend of the channel, a producer for the channel, like Jed Eckert and John Doe Juggalo, or you can even become a channel director, like Frank from Frank's Media and Reviews, and Mr. Smelly Potato. But if you got no money to throw away, guys, don't you worry about it all. We just hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, get out in those streets, tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.